The final form of an equation, of a linear equation that we're going to learn this year is called standard form. And standard form is an equation of a line that's written in the form ax plus by equals c. There's two other vocabulary words that we're going to learn. One is x-intercept. That's the point where a line crosses the x-axis. So here I've drawn a line, and where y is equal to 0, we call this point where the line intersects the x-axis and y is equal to 0, the x-intercept. We also call this the zero of a function. So when f of x is equal to 0 or y is equal to 0, we call that the zero of a function. So we've now learned three different forms of equations, and you can describe any line using one or more forms of a linear equation. And any two equations for the same line are equivalent. So I can use slope-intercept form, I can use point-slope form, I can use standard form, and I'm describing the same line. So we have slope-intercept form. If we look at the three forms of the linear equations, slope-intercept, and that was y equals mx plus b. An example would be y equals negative 3x plus 6. And I would use slope-intercept form if you are given the slope and the intercept and asked to write an equation. I also think it's easy to graph when it's in this form because you start with the y-intercept and then you can use your slope to create another point. The second form we learned was point slope. That was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And an example was y minus 3 equals negative 3 times parentheses x minus 1. And I would use point slope form if I was given one or more points, or 1 point and slope. And finally, we've got standard form. That's written as ax plus by equals a constant c. Two examples. Oh, let me erase that. 3x plus y equals 6. 6x plus 2y equals 12. And I would use this form if you're starting with a word problem and you're asked to write an equation. So I want to show you how the three forms are actually equal. They're the same line. Let's start with standard form, 3x plus y equals 6. And I want to show that I can write this same line in slope-intercept form. In slope-intercept form, I want it to look like y equals, right? Because here I start out with y, and then I have my x term plus an intercept. So I want to get this in a form where it's y equals. Well, we've learned in our equations that to do that, to have y by itself, I can do the inverse operations. In this case, subtract 3x from both sides. And I'm left with y equals 6 minus 3x. I'm going to switch these terms just using the commutative property. Put my negative 3x in the front, and you can see that this is slope-intercept form. So I took that same line, that same equation, I just rewrote it in slope-intercept form, but they're equivalent. If I do the same thing with point-slope form, I'm going to distribute this negative 3. So negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times a negative 1 is equal to a plus 3. Again, if I want to write this in slope-intercept form, my goal is to have y equals and then my x term plus intercept. So if I want y by itself, I'm going to do the inverse of subtraction here and add 3 to both sides. Once I do that, I have negative 3 plus 3, that becomes 0. And I have y equals negative 3x plus 6, which is that same slope-intercept form. So it doesn't matter whether the line is written in standard form, point-slope form, or slope-intercept form, it describes the same line. I'm going to try to draw this. I am not doing well with straight lines today. Okay, so if I take slope-intercept form, it doesn't really matter which one I start with, it's just easier for me to graph. I can see that my intercept is 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have my y-intercept at 6. And then I can use my slope, which is negative 3. My slope here is negative 3, which means that's a negative 3 over 1. Change in y over change in x. So I can go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and then to the right 1. That would be my next point. Down 3 over 1, my next point. And then I can connect those points, which is not going to look pretty. As close as I can. You can draw a better line than that. And that's the graph of the line y equals negative 3x plus 6, or in any of these two forms.